All right, we're going. Coaches coaching, coaches coaching. We've got the Mark Fisher in the house with us today. And we've got the master trainers at Salt Mine. We have a retreat going on right now. So a lot of our head trainers are in the other room in a big, huge retreat. And we stepped out for a moment to meet with Mark Fisher. Mark, how are you doing?
Great.
Great. So for those that don't know it, Mark owns a facility out in New York. It's about what's the size of it, Mark? 2,000 square feet?
It's a little bit bigger than that. There are two different facilities. They're about 4,500, 5,000 square feet altogether, but the actual training floor is Solaris.
Yeah.
So our semi-private training floor, for perspective, is 650 square feet, where we train 3 people at a time when 3 people are coming in and 2 coaches are coaching. So it is not uncommon for people to be stepping over each other as they're doing glute bridges and all manner of intimacy.
Awesome. No, that's all. And the reason I bring that up is because you've created such a great culture. I wanted to touch on, though, real fast. This was the first question that I wanted to ask about. On your bio, you have your spirit animal. I'm trying to pull this up here just a second. Your spirit animal. And you guys, if you have not checked out their website, you need to do that. Your spirit animal is Brian Patrick Murphy.
Yeah.
Who is Brian Patrick Murphy, if you don't mind me asking?
If you scroll down, actually, I think he's like the next 1 or 2 on there.
Okay.
You'd have to, I guess they're alphabetical order.
Yeah, they are. Here, let's see.
He's on there.
Right there we go.
Okay.
Got it. He's the minister of belief.
Yeah, the minister of belief. Brian is, he's actually also the mayor of the clubhouse now. Brian is one of our co-founders. So Brian is just one of my best friends. Kyle Langworthy, the Beast, Beasticles, Brian, who we call the Manimal, myself, and Michael Keeler were the 4 co-founders. And Brian's a really unique guy. He's got a lot of energy. He's also, when we say the minister of belief, I think there was 1 person that did not sign up that he had a sales conversation with last year. So the only thing about Brian is you have to be careful because you'll all sign up for a membership if you talk to him.
If you talk to Brian? No, it's awesome. I'm, as you're talking here, I want to just scroll through these bios because you've got the minister of belief, the kettlebell, Jesus unicorn. This is good stuff. So this is leading into kind of what we want to talk to you about, the culture that you've created within your facility. We talk about the size of the facility, and you've made such a huge impact in the fitness industry, in the New York community itself. What's the secret sauce here?
Yeah, I mean, such like a big question, right? The first thing I always have to qualify is I don't know, right? Any student of cognition that understands the way the brain works is rightfully humble and aware that oftentimes we fill in backstories about, oh, this is what I did. However, to give you something a little bit more tactical, I think what worked for us is from day one, we were just very clear on who we were, what we believed in, and importantly, who we wanted to serve. And I think we just sprinted at as hard as we could. So when we started Mark Fisher Fitness, at the time, I was a one-man band, and Michael Keeler, who is my business partner and my best friend since our high school community theater group, the very first thing we did when we were putting together a business plan was not numbers. It wasn't anything to do with fitness. It was a discussion around what are our values, what are the behavioral standards that matter to us, what is the mission of this organization, and what is the vision? What kind of world are we trying to contribute to? And that can be very academic, and I do a lot of consulting and coaching outside the fitness industry, and a lot of it's not very good because a lot of their it's okay, and they're doing the best they can, but oftentimes the executives will go to retreat and they'll be like, our value is excellence. This is a picture of an eagles, but then nothing ever changes. So I think we were both clear about who we were and what we stood for. And because we had people that were aligned, particularly those first 6 months, I think we were just so strong in documenting people in our values that particularly as the team has grown, that has allowed us, I think, to really continue to stay true to who we were when we began. One other thing that I would note that I think is often not appreciated when we're discussing culture in any business, certainly in a fitness facility, is that I think ideally it is a co-creation with the client, with the members, of the customers, in our case, the ninjas. And so many of the terms and the iconography, even some of the nicknames that you hear at Mark Fisher Fitness came from the ninja community. And we just feel like part of our job is always to listen to them and try to look very carefully. And when something captures their imagination, we try to encapsulate it into our mythology.
Awesome. I love that. I think, one thing I kind of took away from it is you guys know who you are, and you guys have created that identity, and now people are that gravitate to that are coming in, and now they're adding to that. That's kind of what I heard you say. Essentially, you guys are you're just creating that environment for everybody to flourish. With what the original identity was in the beginning.
Yeah, and it's it certainly evolves over time, but I've always maintained one advantage of being crystal clear about that kind of thing is ideally you're looking for other people to raise their hand. And what they're saying is like, I believe what you believe.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
The same way. And it's interesting too, in that I think there are almost two different conversations when we talk about culture, having done a lot of this work now. There's, first of all, how do we set the framework? How do we create the structure of the garden to allow that culture to flourish? But then a separate conversation is how do we either maintain a culture that's already existing and keep it vibrant, keep it organic, keep it real, or change a given culture? Because MFF, certainly not a perfect place. And we are forever looking to tinker and improve everything about Mark Fisher Fitness. And, and it's interesting because cultural change can take a long time. And, we certainly had a few moments in our history where it was clear there were certain behaviors, we were seeing certain standards that were being met, not reflective of implicit expectations that to some extent Michael and myself had about how one lives an elegant life. And we are now in our third iteration of our values for that reason. Because my perspective is if there's something that's really bothering me, if I'm seeing people show up in a way that doesn't feel right to me, if I can't point to a value, if I can't point to a specific standard or expectation, then I don't really have any right to have any feelings about that at all. That's on me as the leader to get clear around my vision. It's because I can't hold people accountable to my implicit desires for what they should do. And you see that more common than you might think.
I think it's awesome when you just everything you're just saying, but you go to the website and how you say, we truly give a shit. And you literally run a cult. You run a cult. You don't run a gym. You have raving fans that you have a cult. Yeah, they're drinking the unicorn blood and they love you.
It's a church. It's totally what it is. It's a secular church. We sell fitness, but we've always maintained, even from day one, that we're really more in the personal development space more than fitness. We happen to do fitness because that is something that people want to buy. And it happens to be something that I'm both passionate about and happens to be a domain expertise of mine. So because I have that as a background, that becomes a useful thing to sell. And by the way, we all know fitness is so amazing because it's an incredible foundation to become the best version of yourself. But in fact, MFF at its very best is a form of church. It's a secular church. But particularly in, a place like New York, which is busy, just can feel very isolating. It is a place where like-minded people come together who share their values to do a difficult thing through adversity in the promise of blossoming into a better version of themselves. And that, I think, is the thing that I'm certainly most interested in. And quite frankly, I think you see across the industry, most people that are passionate about fitness might not use that verbiage, right? So I'm from New York and I go to Burning Man, so I'm very pretentious. But in fact, that's the same thing for most of us. We start with deadlifts, but ultimately we gravitate towards, I think, a passion for self-actualization via movement.
So I want to ask you, one of the things I want to ask you, Mark, and you kind of touched on a little bit, as far as the culture goes and setting the right expectations. But as you bring in new coaches who may have different values or who have different ideas of what fitness is to them, how do you take those coaches and bring them into the Mark Fisher fitness culture and have them fully integrate, so that you guys can be your most successful brand?
Yes, great question. So at this point, what we do now, and again, this has evolved over time, but our current process is anybody that's interested in working with Mark Fisher Fitness has to become a trainer in residence. And a trainer in residence is similar to an internship, but it's different in that they're paid some. And we're looking, frankly, for somebody that already has technical proficiency as a coach that is looking for a cultural immersion in Mark Fisher Fitness. And ideally, not only is an opportunity for them to learn from us, we're interested in finding other interesting, weird, beautiful people that believe what we believe that we can learn from, that can deepen and enrich what we do here at Mark Fisher Fitness. And because of that, two things are useful. Number one, by the time we hire someone for a full-time team member, we've worked with them for several months, because I want to know, like, who are you really when you're not behaving, right? Like when I'm looking to bring somebody on the team, I don't really want to know, like, I want to know who you are on your best day, but like, I don't know, I'm not perfect. I don't know how good days. I want to know who you are on your worst day and what sort of values you show up when life gets tough. Because life gets tough for all of us. And you've seen work relationships, it's the same thing with romantic relationships, where like everything's fun because the first few months, it's mostly just like eating ice cream, having sex, and watching Netflix. And then like 6 months into it, 12 months into it, you're like, I don't even like you, right? And I really value the opportunity to get to know people over the long haul, because then we can really see truly, are you a fit? Now, the other piece that's perhaps a little bit more immediately actionable, regardless of how one's onboarding system is set up, is our onboarding system is pretty rigorous. It's not perfect. I'm tinkering on it every time we bring people in. I would try to make it better every single time. But essentially what we did was we just figured out a schedule of, we've got, about 40 to 80 hours of training time. How do we divvy that up into practical time where they're doing classroom sessions with coaches to learn technique? How do we divvy that up to shadowing where they're just watching and learning? How do we divvy that up from taking the classes and the semi-privates? How do we divvy that up to being a part of team meetings where they get to see organically the way our culture operates, how we communicate? And then importantly, I would also note the first thing people do when they show up is they spend a full half day with me just talking about the culture. So before we do anything else, we're not even going to do the HR stuff or talk about your email or talk about payroll until we talk about why this place exists. And it's a very, one of my moves, honestly, is like, I'm real candid with people, because I get it. I appreciate people want to come and work at Mark Fisher Fitness, and I can sometimes see those starry eyes where they think they joined Disneyland. And, Mickey and Minnie get into some arguments sometimes. So in those 4 hours, I'm not only trying to give them information about what matters to us, our culture, the standards that we're really going to hold them to, and make it clear, by the way, that like fun place we are, unicorn sparkle dust, ha ha ha, facility has, that we're very serious about the work. Yeah, like we're ridiculous humans, but we're serious about the mission. We're serious about a certain level of conduct that we conduct ourselves and with each other. It's interesting because so much that first, it sounds like it would be inspiration. Often it's not. Often I'm like, here's the challenges you're going to run to. Here's like why MFF is like a very terrifying and challenging place to work. But to some extent, I don't mind it being a crucible. So there's sort of two pieces for me. There is the tactical logistics of how one uses time, the constraints of time, to make sure we use that time as effectively as possible so they understand our standards. We've got crystal clear written out checklists for everything from classes to semi-private training sessions to internal communication standards. So we rigorously teach them the mechanics of it. But for me, there's also a cultural piece that is important that's, I think, a little bit more ineffable. But even, I would note, again, gets a half day of time with me personally, just explaining them why we exist, what we're showing up to do, what we think the stakes are, because of what we think could hopefully be the impact Mark Fisher Fitness might have on the fitness industry, and hopefully, if I'm dare so grand, the society at large.
I love that. Thanks for answering that question.
I just kind of a follow-up, but I appreciate everything that you do where it's, hey, your programming follows a lot of that we believe over here at Bossa Fitness. So you have great coaches and great coaching, but just like you're talking about the coaches and how you bring them on, and I expect this, and I want to make sure that we have a cultural buy-in with you where I feel appreciated that you working here. But I think you ingrain a lot of that business aspects too, like business for unicorns. How much do you bring that on to the coaches? Because obviously that's an external thing, right, for other coaches in the market. But how do you bring that with your actual coaches internally?
Yeah, I think, it's because what's interesting is Business for Unicorns in many ways is like full day training programs. It's really just an extrapolation of what we tend to do with a team on a regular basis. Now, it depends on the course, right? Because not everybody in the team is something like Care and Feeding Superheroes is going to be relevant to them, because unless you manage that particular content is not particularly relevant. But for instance, something like Time Ninja, for me, MFF at its best is a human behavioral experiment, and it's like a human potential machine. We're just all trying to become the best versions of ourselves. So So the business for unicorn stuff, which, as you mentioned, is separate of fitness. So say something like this weekend, we did a course called Clients for Life. Well, the vast majority of those customer service exercises and the 3 steps, the super service principles, all of those things we cover as part of our weekly meetings. So part of the ongoing development, so similar, clearly some of you guys are into, which, like, by the way, high five, is, we are constantly training the team. So every week at our Wednesday team meeting, we go through a 4-week cycle where 1 week we learn the new class phase and the business team does their own breakout. 1 week we do some sort of other fitness in-service type of coaching focused exercise, another business team breakout where they might do marketing or a customer service or an MBO training. And then 1 week we get together, we do one that is focused on coaching and literally on the communication skills of how to ask open-ended questions, how to build rapport by using reflective listening, how to handle conflict when a client is upset, which we know is going to happen in any service organization. And then additionally, customer service, which can overlap with coaching, but that is a lot of it is role playing. So that's something that I think is incredibly underestimated. And honestly, as I'm saying this, I think we could be doing more of this, but making people do earnest role playing and working on the pain points of the business so the team has the opportunity to practice those often high tension make or break moments that I think can make a service industry soar or not do as well.
Yeah. I was just wondering for trainers who are watching this that want to have their own culture, what do you think is your best recommendation for them to find that culture for themselves with their clients?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think it's I don't know that one. I have to say I struggle for like a just do this thing, because I don't, this sounds like kind of broad, but I think, a lot of it really is just like knowing yourself really, really well and getting clear on the things that really, really matter to you. And again, I'm like, it's obvious to anybody that I'm like a huge nerd. So I'm a big believer so in addition to MFF values, like we, at least once a year, I want to do some of the team where we get clear on what are your personal values? What are the things that matter to you? And if these are the things that you value, if that's what you say matters to you, what are examples of actions that display that behavior that's reflective of that personal value? If you say that's something that matters to you, yeah. Or where are other opportunities where you can behave in a way that is reflective of these values that you've just declared that are personally meaningful to you? Because for me, I have a hard time separating values and culture. I think they're so interrelated. And MFF, of course, is known for like the ostentatiousness of our culture and like the cray-cray and the imagery and the colors and the vulgarity and the metaphors. And that's true, and that's all great, but I've always maintained that all that stuff is, I wouldn't say it's the window dressing, but I would say it's like, it's maybe the most obvious blossoming of the flower, but the thing that matters is like the plant itself, the tree, and then that's created by, seeding the ground and making the ground fertile. And a lot of that is personal exploration around one's philosophy of life. Because I would maintain that any culture and any business, for me, I think at its best is about someone testing a hypothesis of like, what does it mean to live life well? Right? Like my whole interest in having Mark Fisher Fitness in the first place is when I began to understand I could have a community of not just the ninjas, but other people like aligned to the same mission that was bigger than us. And in that journey, we could learn difficult and painful lessons about ourselves and become better than we were. And then that work allows us to not just be better what we're doing professionally, but to be better fathers and brothers and friends and citizens. Then that's when I got like kind of really excited. So I realized that's a little esoteric. I wish I had a more specific, like do these 3 things. But I think, if I were to give one action steppy thing is there are some great books about it. And I think culture's so tough because it's so ineffable. It's like smoke, right? You can't talk about it directly. But I think studying cultures that have done this effectively, and the one I always recommend is Delivering Happiness. Certainly was a book that was very influential to me because I don't know that culture, for better or for worse, I don't think you can make that academic. I think you can see it and you know it when you see it, right? It's like porn. Like, when you see it, but it's hard to actually describe what it is.
Mark,
They could say that.
You know you're talking to Salt Lake City.
I love it. I love the passion you have.
That was
finish that book actually delivering happiness. One of the questions I have for you is, I love how you put that all the ostentatiousness is like the window dressing, right? But one of the things as I followed you guys on social media and read on your website is I feel like there's these special moments that you guys purposely create for your clients. And I would just ask the question, what special moments do you purposely design for your clients? And what are some of the examples of those? Because I think that's really critical in building that community. And I think you guys do a special job of that, of making clients feel special, but it's on purpose. And I just walk us through how you guys do that.
Yeah, there are all sorts of specific action steps with that. One thing that I always recommend that everybody in the world do, that every business would benefit from doing is, and this is even more granular, but also can probably start doing immediately, is just getting in the habit of writing cards on a weekly basis. Just writing cards to celebrate individuals, because it's that personalization that people are craving. And certainly anybody that does fitness the level we do it, it's also our differentiator from the big box gym environment. Now, there are all sorts of specific examples I could give you of times that we've done stuff, but I'll tell you what, so here's an example of a thing that we're planning on doing. We haven't done yet, so don't tell anybody. But because I'm literally constantly always obsessively reading books and thinking about what else can we do to wow people? What else can we do to wow people? And this wasn't my idea, but one of my team members noticed that one of our ninjas has been coming to the clubhouse. I think he's done 2,000 classes. And the highest tier of our founders club, so we have a loyalty program. Rainbow Founders Club is 1,250 classes. So this person's through the roof. So we're okay, well, this is not enough for them to have a rainbow tier. So what we thought it would be fun to do is we're commissioning getting a cape made for her, a personalized cape. And then since she's always in the 6:30 class, we're going to email the rest of the class on a time when she doesn't know it and set up and come in and teach the class a little bit of choreography that they'll learn in the email in advance. Just a silly thing to the end of class. We'll come out to do a ceremony with a scepter and maybe a chalice and turn down the lights and do an award ceremony to award her for being the mayoress of the clubhouse. And it's things like that.
So Mark, I'm going to cut you off because that's so awesome.
That is amazing.
So, and here's why I say, and here's what I think is so awesome about it, is it's so personalized, right? There's so many details, and that's you talk about creating wow moments, and you talk about creating, moments that you see on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that, and everyone's trying to create that, next big whatever, right? But at the end of the day, you guys are creating a personal experience, right? And who cares if everyone sees the chalice, right? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But at the end of the day, whoever that 2,000 person is, right, they're going to love that. And everyone that's involved in that experience is going to remember that forever.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's a wonderful, and one thing that I'm planning on doing probably before that, because we're commissioning a cape, which is hilarious, I'm just so moved by, we have any community has these subcultures, right? So that's another thing too I've been noodling on is what are the sub-communities at MFF we can celebrate? So we have a group of 6:30 ninjas that just they're very consistent because they're people that work out 6:30 and they just do crazy things like Dolly Parton's birthday. They all dressed up like Dolly Parton. They did one, I'm going to get emotional talking about it. One of our ninjas just got called into active duty for he's part of the military. And they did this, they all came in military camo with him and did this really beautiful ceremony to wish him off as he's about to leave our clubhouse and go and fight for our country. And it's so interesting because now it's I feel the ninjas are so good at this. It's competitive. It's I want to one-up them. And even the mayor's thing, I have to say, the last thing I'll say that I'm so proud about that is that's not even my idea. It was somebody on my team's idea. So when we talk about these wow moments at Mark Fisher Fitness, we talk about what we call the 3 super service principles. Principle 1 is just nail the basics, right? If you're in a hotel, you want towels, right? You don't get extra points for not having blood on your mattress, right? A non-bloody mattress is just a basic, right? You can't market that. Then super service principle 2 is personalization, right? And that's really meeting the person where they're at. And that can be something as simple as using their names to writing them thank you cards. And then super service principle number 3, I love, because that's making these wow moments. And it's so hard because you can't systemize it. right? Because if you systemize every time it's somebody's birthday, we all wear pointy hats and we all get a Quest bar. Well, that's a wow moment the first time you do it. But if you systemize it, then it's not a bad thing, but it's not a wow moment anymore. So like, I think what I'm constantly driving to do is I want to make our wow moments more consistent to the point where now we have to keep going even more over the top to blow people's minds. So they're just like screaming from the heavens about what an amazing experience they had at Mark Fisher Fitness.
I don't have any, I just think that's so awesome that you're basically what you're talking about is just all your clients are your friends and you guys care about them and all you're doing is celebrating your friendship every time you go into the gym.
Yeah, like I just, it's so funny. Like I'm a big evolutionary psychology nerd, and in evolutionary psychology, they have this thing called reciprocal altruism, right? And this is, anybody who's a student of marketing understands one of the principles of influence is reciprocity, where you give something to someone and then they feel in your debt. And I feel like something that's really worked in my life is I'm kind of a sucker and I'm incredibly loyal because it's very easy for me to feel like I'm in a debt to someone. And like, I feel like the ninjas, I'm always like, I can't believe they're giving us their time and their money and trusting us with their body. And I'm just like, I don't feel entitled to any of it. So like, I feel like I'm just constantly desperately trying to pay back the ninjas. And for me, a lot of time, frankly, the team for the fact that they've committed to the shared thing together. So I'm just constantly feeling very, very grateful. And I feel lucky that my life is constantly trying to be worthy and live up to the honor that I've been given and the privilege I've been given by people I really care about a lot.
Say one thing. Awesome. I just want to say the thing I love most about that, Mark, is just that like it doesn't even cost you guys that much to make these things happen, but it just seems so much like you just are so passionate about it, you care so much that you guys make them happen. And I think more businesses could do that. Great things would happen. So thanks for being an example of that.
Yeah, I mean you're getting teary-eyed over it. That's how much you care,
I think Michelle has one last question for you.
Yeah. So with that being said, to kind of wrap things up, is that to work in fitness, it's a high-paced energy environment. You have to be on your go. You're passionate about what you do. So what do you personally do to continue to fuel that every day? Because we have really long days. I'm sure you have super long days, and it's just hard to kind of keep. Some trainers kind of need to keep that passion as they fuel and keep going through the industry, especially when you're in the industry for years. What do you do personally to kind of keep that passion, keep your energy up in the work?
Yeah. I think for me, so I'm a huge fan of this guy, Dr. Richard Boyatzis, who I could pass along the name if you want to email after, who is a professor of management at Case Western University. And he's doing some really interesting stuff, trying to get biometric data on how specifically leaders recover from what he calls power stress. But there's takeaways, I think, for anybody in any job that's demanding, anybody that does any sort of work that can burn you out, and training can definitely burn you out. So he talks a lot about what he calls a renewal, or what I call often psycho-spiritual renewal. And renewal is different than physiological renewal. Those are things that matter too, right? So certainly one piece, we know we're fitness people, gotta sleep, you gotta eat properly, you have to get some exercise, you have to put in those physical inputs first. But then beyond that, Boyatzis actually would say there's 4 specific buckets of what he calls self-renewal. Bucket 1 is compassion, which is taking time to care for someone else and feel cared for, really connecting in a meaningful way with other people. Luckily, because of our work, we get to do that on a regular basis. 2 is mindfulness. This could be anything from spending time in nature to meditation to prayer, if you practice one of the wisdom tradition. Then 3, we have play, which is like being fun and being silly. And I'm very lucky. That's something that's like very obviously like I can't help but do. And then finally, we have hope. And that's getting in touch. And for me, the specific activities there are things like visioning, doing 5-year plans, thinking and being inspired by a compelling vision of your future. And the point Boyatzis would make, a point I'll share about that is the renewal and inspiration, filling your cup psycho-spiritually, psychologically filling your cup and your passion can't be something that is saved up for once a month, and so not even the weekend. Probably have to do it on a regular basis. And one other thing I would offer that has always helped me avoid burnout, I think, which isn't explicitly covering those buckets, is just education. So for me, I find when I'm talking to a trainer that's getting bored of training, often it's because that they're not investing, they're not interested, they're not finding out new things they're able to bring into their work and to their craft. So for me, I think an ongoing pursuit of education has also helped me keep it interesting, because for me, the work is never done, right? There's always room for Jello. I feel like I've chosen some, like we all have a very hard thing to do in our life, and I approach it with great humility. And I know that, master is probably not for this world, and that's fine. And I'm just so honored to do something that every day there's opportunities for me to grow and develop. And if I'm finding that I'm bored, I'm boring. If I'm finding that I'm burned out, I want to take personal responsibility and really ask myself, what do I need to do to get re-inspired? And for anybody looking for that, I think those 4 buckets plus education would be action steps for where I would start.
Awesome. There's no more questions, but after RJ says this thing, I want to give you a cyber hug afterwards. This is amazing.
Mark, I do want to point out, how many members do you have, roughly?
Between the clubhouse and Snatch, anywhere from depending on the time of year, 950 to 1,100.
Awesome. And the one thing that I wanted to, and the reason I asked that is, you bring about this, you talked about the story with the active duty member, and you see the passion that you have on it. And at the end of the day, I think that's, if we were to talk about the secret sauce, that's probably it, right? Is your passion, your care, what you bring to the table. So we appreciate your example. Thanks a lot for being on here with us. And I can't wait to see you in September, man.
Looking forward to it.
All right, we'll end this recording.